Okay, who's this? Kevin and Oscar. So right off the bat, you have that clause, so that's good. In this case, you have the English wanted to find a sea route. Well, when we got Google Docs, I was able to start having them go into the text. And first of all, it was just find all the nouns. Then find the noun you think is the main one. You can just pick one, you have to commit. So just highlight one noun in each sentence that you think is what the sentence is about. And when we first started with that, you would see them put it in all kinds of different places. So the next I went to, okay, now we're going to find all the verbs. So nouns, the verbs, and then the last piece was, okay, now find the verb that's connected to the noun. And once they were able to do that, then that gives them the idea of the sentence. Okay, this is new text today. You guys have not read this, okay? But you guys remember yesterday we were talking about the Spanish coming and taking the gold? Yeah. All right. Well, they came from Europe. Well, remember I told you yesterday also they were at war with the English a lot. And in this case, the English find out that there's a new continent, new area, right? The Spanish are already over here. So what do? They send their own guys on their own ships. So what you're going to be reading about is a person from England, a ship captain, and he's going to come over here and basically go to battle against the Spanish. Because the English and everybody else, they're like, that's a new country. You guys can't have that. We're going to go take it. So this is a pretty interesting part. Now, I'm not going to read it to you. I want to see how you do with it, just like it is. If you're not sure about some of the words, remember when we talk about read the whole sentence. Think about what the sentence is saying, and then think about what that word might mean, all right? So what you're going to do is find the simple subject and the predicate, okay? Now remember, it's the subject without all the extra stuff, and then the action that they did, okay? You're going to highlight the subject in red, and you're going to highlight the predicate in what color? Okay, what are you going to do with the clauses? You're going to highlight them in green. Is the subject or predicate, is the subject of the sentence ever in the preposition or the clause? No. Okay, so you're going to get 10 minutes. And I want to see, there's going to be points for the people that go the farthest. Okay, if you haven't shared back with me, please do, because I'm going to start looking and seeing where you guys are. Yes. Okay. Okay, so what do we always do? Just restart the computer. Either that or pull that out. Okay, good. Now I want the complete predicate though. So in other words, it should be like a complete sentence. On the SBAC, you have to actually go in and highlight stuff from the text to show why you picked answer A. So that's a big one. The other thing, though, is just getting them to read text from beginning to end and stick with it, not just jump as soon as you see a piece of information that could be used to answer the question. By them having to go in and find those specific things and in a big piece of text, that makes a huge difference because they're just not used to that. Let's take a look at a couple of these. I can just go in and it'll say shared with me, and their names are. So I just click whichever one I want. It becomes a tab up at top of my browser in Chrome, which works really well with this. And so then I'll have the names right across the top, and I can just pick whichever one I want, pull it up, and then we can go through it as a class. So right off the bat, you have that clause, so that's good. In this case, you have the English wanted to find a sea route, okay? You could have probably stopped it right there, right? Because that's where the sentence is going to be, all right? So I'm just going to change that back to black text, okay? Again, remember what we're looking at is, do we have complete sentences with these? I could just take that also out of there. And the English wanted to find a sea route, right? That's our idea. So that's what we're looking for. Next one is they called it the Northwest Passage. Very good. All right, this is the one you're going to get right now. Everybody see? Yes. Okay, what does that say? What does that say, Jose? What does that say? Okay, everybody see that? Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight these for you. As soon as I do, you're going to need to figure out what fraction they are, what decimal they could be, and how would you write it in word form. Everybody get that? Yeah. Now, you got to think about that one right there.
60.
Yeah.
There he is.
Working on this.
Yeah.
It's Google Slides, which is like a very simple PowerPoint application. So all I did was make that 100 grid, and then I just you make the grid, which involves basically making squares and putting them in order, and then it's on the slide. I just duplicate the slide 12 times because I had 12 pairs of kids, and so they each get that 100 grid, and then I added the text boxes. And then I just did those once and copied them to each slide. So they all get the same slide. The only thing I had to do then, as you guys saw, was I put the different fractions on there, represented them with the different colors. So that was basically all it was. And that actually works really well for that type of thing, because instead of having to go back and forth with all those tabs, you can just slide up and down and pick the ones that you want, as you saw me do. And so that was just another one of those techniques that you look at that and you say, I really want to be able to do this. What would be the best way to do it? You guys did some really good stuff. I'm really impressed. Let's start with this group. Okay. Well, Jocelyn, you had the right answer down here. Who could raise their hand and tell me what the decimal would be here? Jocelyn? 20. But what do you have to say first? Brian?
150.
Point what? 0.20. Okay, there you go. Remember, when you guys, it's just like writing out numbers. All right? When you say any kind of decimal, you always start with the point. If there's a whole number in front of it, you could say 1.5 or 1.03. If there's no whole number in front of it, you just say 0.2 or 0.20. So they could have had that decimal, and what's the other one they could have had? Yes? 0.2. Very good, Cindy. All right, so the fractions here, how many did you have altogether here? Alexandra, do you remember? How many were shaded in altogether? Oops. How many? 20. So what would the fraction be? How many in this altogether? What's this grid? 100. So what would the fraction be? 20 hundredths. That's very good. She got it. Good job. All right, 20 out of 100. Who could give me another fraction for that 20 out of 100? Bilal?
1/5.
Ah, 1/5. That's interesting. How do you mean that?
Because if you multiply 20 times 5,
Yeah.
it gives you 100.
Okay. All right, you guys see what he's saying? Now watch this. And Daniela, this is what we were talking about. Watch what I'm going to do with this. Remember, we said that would be what, 1/10, right? So what would this be? There'd be 2/10, right? Yeah. Okay, so how many of those would we have? Well, let's see. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, right? Everybody agree? And Bilal said that what she had there was 1/5. One of the benefits that I'm seeing that most people wouldn't think of is there are students in that room that probably the entire time they've been in school have been considered maybe lower than they really were. For one of the reasons is they just don't speak. And over the years, especially with CST, kids learned that if you sat there quietly and paid attention to the teacher, you wouldn't be in trouble. And you were never really required to speak or answer. So I have one girl in particular in there that we had her in intervention, and she really has abilities, and those abilities showed up when we started doing this, because she showed that she could follow directions better than everybody else, that she could understand the structures of the writing better than most of the kids, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, this is not the kid that we thought we had. And even the lower kids in the room, academically, sometimes some of them are the best at doing some of these things. So when it gets right down to it, it's really leveling the playing field. You just got to think like a teacher, and you need to learn some very basic skills. And if you learn those basic skills and think like a teacher, you can do this stuff. We have the capabilities to deliver a curriculum to the students that's much more vibrant and engaging and functional. And now the tools are right at your fingertips. If you really want to do this, everything exists. It just involves you learning a few more skills, you know. And there's very few people that I've ever worked with that started doing this stuff that said, no, this isn't a good idea. Once they learn to do it, it's kind of like, why wasn't I doing this before?
Don't forget to visit our Common Core website and follow us on Facebook and Twitter.